good job with you, man. I tell you, you hold the show, buddy.
Well, I thought you were an excellent guest. So what we'll do here is anything else. I want to talk about how you went from, okay, I've developed this laminated column thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we decided we decided to get into metal and how you use that to maybe generate additional business, more from a logistics standpoint, and also anything else. Wes, was there something that you might want to add? You can stay on screen on this if you want, and I'd love to have you here and add a question or two if you've got something you'd like to add. Because I think I told you, Reuben, Wes is this is his gig. He's a podcast guy. He has his own shows. He directs other shows. He directs a show just before ours. This show today was mutual friends of ours. So if there's anything, Wes, that you have that you picked up on that you might want to just add from a slightly outsider standpoint, I'm all for that too. So.
Yeah, I can pop in a couple things. What I'll do, if you don't mind, Randy, starting off, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have you just say something like, "Hey guys, welcome back to Added Wins. We're coming back here with Reuben," and that sort of a thing. And then that way, I'll edit off the beginning of this.
Okay. You want me to start like pretty much in a second here?
Yep. Just give it just a little bit of time to have a space, and then we'll be good to go.
Okay. Okay. Hey, welcome back, everybody. So on Tuesday at noon, we had this awesome interview with Reuben Miller from Triad Building Components out in beautiful Victor, Montana, out in the mountain country, Big Sky country. That is Big Sky country, I think. Anyway, but because he was such a gracious guest and an awesome interview, decided to do a little additional feature from time to time called Added Wins, because we're building wins and now we're going to add a win or two, right? So we're going to bring Reuben back for some chat. So Reuben, thanks for hanging on. And we've got this lovely looking Wesley Wyatt down below. Wes is my producer director. So everything goes right here is because of him. If it goes wrong, it's probably something I did. I mean, that sounds a lot like you're my wife, but so anyway, Reuben, thank you. I appreciate you taking a few more minutes to be here, man.
Thanks for having me. And Wes, I'd say right up front that anybody that can handle both me and Randy on the same screen and just even have it, working together for more than a minute does a pretty good job. So that's saying a lot about you.
Great material is done by great guests. It's not me, it's you guys.
Well, you do a great job, because I can tell you right now, if I try to do this stuff on my own, I learned 2 or 3 things in my many years of doing stuff, just existing. And one is that at some point in life, you need to figure out the stuff you can't do, and you need to hire people to do it. That's why I don't do electrical. That's why I don't do plumbing, and that's why I don't produce shows, right? So, but anyways, Wes, thank you, my friend. Quick shout out before we get going with Wes is if anybody has any kind of social media. Well, actually, Wes, why don't you take 1 minute and just do a little time for Wes Wyatt, because let's do it. What's Wes Wyatt do? You're not talking, Wes.
You're.
There's no sound, bud.
There we go.
What a producer.
See that? That's a perfect example.
Hook yourself, Wes. Hook yourself.
Perfect example. There's a lot of bells and whistles that are going on behind the scenes, like making sure people aren't muted and that sort of thing. And
including yourself.
Yeah, and that's right. And so what I do is I essentially just go through and do all the behind the scenes things so that people like yourselves don't have to. I mean, that's as simple of an elevator speech as I can give you.
Perfect. So, Reuben, we kind of touched base on a lot in your move and the guts to do that and those things, but we didn't have time because I thought it was a very good discussion. So you started developing a business with the laminated columns, right, for post frame building. and I know you come from a background of roll forming metal. That's what you were primarily responsible for, a big part of your life back in Ohio. Was that just a natural? Was it because of the demand out there to help with logistics, or all the above? I mean, what caused Triad Building Components to make that leap? Because that's even a bigger leap financially, right?
It is. Yeah. So diving into, I worked at Country Metals and then the sister company, which is Qualiform Metals, and they were the producing company for the lumber yard, as well as their own truss shop. And I was fortunate enough to work at both locations. And what I found is that as exciting as the post-frame building industry was to work in, and as fun as that was, when I transitioned over into the roll forming side of the industry, it really felt home to me. And I enjoyed that probably even a little bit more than most of the other things, like designing and working on some of that stuff. So originally when we moved out, we thought the biggest need, and the biggest need initially was for laminate columns and to have a manufacturer producer in the Western states. And we transitioned into that after talking to a few of our customers. It kind of segued into, hey, we know you have some roll forming background. So if you can get columns to us in 3 to 4 days, could you do that on metal? And what would that look like? So that switch was probably, even though from an investment standpoint was pretty big, right? The commitment was huge. That switch was a little bit more natural for us because we already had that base. There's 20, 30 customers that were buying columns each week, right? So now what we decided was, when those customers approached us with, hey, we're struggling with metal needs right now. We're placing an order and it's 2 to 3 weeks before it shows up from Salt Lake or Spokane. What could you guys do? So that was a little bit more natural for us, I think.
So the customers, because of your relationships and your service that you had been providing them, they actually came to you, knowing your background and saying, if you can service this well on laminated columns, could you service this on metal? Which made that I won't say a no-brainer, because I know it's a huge investment, but probably less scary. Take the investment part out, take the dollars out, but just philosophically less scary than just moving to Montana and building the laminated column company, because one, steel even better than laminated columns, or at least at the time, I assume you did.
Right.
And you're not going to these customers asking them, will you please buy laminated columns? They're coming to you saying, would you please roll steel for us and we'll buy it. Right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There's almost no education that had to take place on the metal roll forming side of it, because all of these customers that we're dealing with, they're already using, the ag panel, the pro panel, whatever panel that they're using in the industry right now. And we had manufactured that in the past. So that seemed like to us, like it really was a no-brainer. So initially there was a few big wholesale accounts that came in and talked to us and said, hey, we're struggling with getting product on time, right? And then if you miss your cutoff day, you're going to miss that next shipment by up to 2 weeks. So if you're able to manufacture columns and you have a background in metal roofing and siding, why not? That was kind of the question. And it really did take a lot of the kind of fear and anxiety out of that decision for us. You still have, I would like to say, you still have a lot of challenges early on, right? So as you're starting out a company, for an example, so many of the products are similar in terms of profiles and panels, but a lot of the trims are really different, right? The applications in the Western states are different than the ones on the Eastern side of the state. So there was obviously a learning curve. I think we're still learning today as much as we were when we started, but there was a familiar feel to it, unlike the column side, right? So the column side kind of bared the burden of the risk initially.
Right. And so you was able to, for guys that are doing one or the other or both, the logistics of having done it 4+ decades, I know a little bit about this, I think. Trying to load steel, trims, and all the accessories on a truck with a bunch of laminated columns, that's a bit of a I guess, using logistics again, that's a bit of a challenge though, right?
It is. And actually, we had to get pretty creative in how we bunk it. And it was so different from the Eastern states. In the Eastern states, you have a certain way that you fill a truck with product and you ship them out to your customers. Out West, just from the way that you wrap the trim, the bunk, the products, that all looks totally different. So even though we were running the routes to some of these far off locations, now we had to determine, how do we get those metal panel trim pieces out to that customer without scratching them? So we had to get pretty creative on some of those things. But I think the pressure that was taken off early on was, if we're running a route to, let's just use Salt Lake as an example, right? That becomes a little bit easier now to backfill that on metal, because there might be a customer in between that's using metal roofing and siding, but might not be using columns. So it really opened up the door on the sales side of it as well.
Okay, perfect. So now you can be a little bit of I use this, and you'll know who I'm talking about. A new friend of ours, a one-stop shop in a sense, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yes. And that's really what we tried to do. So I think initially in 2018, we started rolling metal roofing for customers. And then that kind of evolved into other things like track, sliding door components, right? Cupolas, Dutch doors, and all that type of stuff. So once we had the infrastructure in and kind of the milk runs built, that was another easy conversation to have with some of our customers, was what are some other products that, maybe the microfoil or, drip stop, what are some products that you guys are looking for today that you can't get? And then a lot of those, we try not to say no, yes or no to a product. We try to really research, can we do it well? Is it worth doing? And is the customer going to feel that good customer service and a quality product if we do that? But it made those questions a lot easier to ask. And it certainly opened the door on a lot of new products that we had never anticipated selling.
Well, makes sense. So we talked earlier, you did the old road warrior mentality when you got out there. You started calling on people door to door, literally. Mm-hmm. Wes is back. He and I belong to a mastermind group called Megamind, and one of the things we talk about a lot is virtual, and that's what a lot of my whole hybriding concept about is how to take the good of the old that we still need. Because I'm a full believer that in my industry, our industry, I should say, you still got to buy a pizza lunch and glad hand and how you doing and go grab a burger and beer. I mean, that's a big part of what we do. Mm-hmm. But we haven't been able to do as much of it.
Right.
And going forward, I happen to believe that when I go back to doing more of it, I'm still going to use more of virtual as a augmentation to trips in between. You've been very old school, but I also know that some of your videos and some of your things you do on Facebook are spot on awesome.
Thank you.
Where do you see yourself going with the new normal? I hate that word, but the virtual, the new normal, the new hybrid way of doing things. Do you see yourself growing more in that, or as your type of business, or what do you think you're going to go back the old way again? 100%.
That's a great question. I probably start by saying we're still not sure, right? Because there's one of the things that we learned is that we don't have to travel so much. I think you talked about that a little bit last week in your podcast. Even though you want to, it became a little bit more difficult to travel. So I think we're all a little bit more intentional on traveling out to see customers, especially when they're 300, 400, 500, 600 miles away. I mean, you do that a lot as well, I know. And I think there's so many things we picked up on, kind of transitioning through 2020, which is first and foremost, we have to be very intentional from the sales side of it on the front counter, making sure that customer's order is fulfilled and corrected, and being that sales rep, the initial, the initial time that you talk to that customer, you have to be able to be that sales rep. Because in the past, we would make these trips out to a lot of different locations every 2 to 3 weeks, right? And we'd see every customer. Well, now most of the customer in our industry, I don't know how you find it, but most of these guys still aren't very comfortable Skyping. I mean, they'll do it if there's a big product to talk about, but usually that's phone calls, right? So I think things are going to change a little bit in terms of how we approach new customers and how we handle the existing customers. Because I think the old way, and I mean, you taught me a lot when it comes to going out and visiting customers, how to present products. That has to change when you can't travel as much, I would say. How are you finding that?
Well, a good point, and how I find it is, and it varies. Old customers, I do believe in our industry, you can insert probably a little bit more virtual, if you will, because you have a long-term relationship, right? I mean, you and I've known each other, and we were going to see each other in April, but we've known each other, 12 years? That doesn't affect if you and I Zoom and we send videos, because we're brothers, right? We've known each other for 12 years. But at some point, with some of these new people that I would be dealing with right now that I've only done virtual with, there's a point in time where they got to see that I really exist, right? You just gotta, you gotta bro hug them. You gotta handshake. You gotta fist bump them. You gotta buy them some pizza and drink a couple burgers, drink a beer in the evening with them. You gotta. So I think it's a combination. If somebody asked me this a week or two ago, if I had to guess right now, and I don't know which way it would be, probably 60-40 eventually was where it'll shake out. And 60-40 could go either way depending. Like in my world, when trade shows come back, and I assume they will to some degree. I mean, I hope they do, because I do enjoy them. During those time of year, and then people like you guys, you all have your customer open houses, dealer open houses, distributor open houses. That can be a 4 or 5 week, 6 week, 8 week, pretty hard hand old road warrior. That can be almost 80-20 to just pounding the road, right?
That's
but then
right.
There's times that come into play where when you guys are busy, in the heart of the season, and if you're an existing customer, you really don't need me wandering in necessarily. You would go have lunch with me because you're a friend, right? But at the end of the day, you're jammed up busy all day. And if you can take a 15-minute Zoom call so I can show you this new thing I want to show you, you can go back to work. I can go back to one more in 12 minutes, right?
Right.
So it's a win-win for both of us. And Wes, what do you think about that?
Well, first and foremost, you'll notice I muted myself unmuted myself this time, so I'm already learning. No, I agree 100% in the fact that things aren't going to go back to the way that they were. Without a doubt, what the shakedown is remains to be seen. There's two things I want to bring up, and one actually has a kind of a political slant to it, not meaning to, especially after what I say next. But the first thing is that, which is, we've had this, morning meetings with each other, and not once have we talked about politics or religion or anything that everybody's out there right now worrying about being, canceled and this and that. Business can be done on, the interwebs without, ruffling each other's feathers. So it doesn't matter what any of us, have as views. We can go back to doing business if, people will allow themselves to do so. Now, with that part said, I do think that, there's some green initiatives that are coming up, not on either side of it. It just is what it is. And that is, there's going to be a lot more, thoughts against flying and trucking and the getting in the car to go somewhere. I used to fly out to Seattle to Redmond, for Microsoft several times a year. And, not only is it a very long flight, but when we would get there, the first thing we would do is eat, and then we would, go back to a hotel room and maybe go out, and then the next day do a little bit of business, and then do the exact same thing again, and then maybe come home. And all that time that now, we can pop on one of these and do this real quick little, meeting online, and then go back to your business. As Randy said, I did a producing and directing on another podcast, literally 15 minutes before we popped on this one, and everybody is spread all over the country. Quite literally. As a matter of fact, the gentleman that we were speaking with is in England. So it's just, I think that this has brought a dynamic into things where if, like, say you're a insurance agent or, someone that has to sit down and talk to people, you don't have that drive to their location, the warm up, the presentation, the cool down, and then the drive away. And if that drive away is a no, it's that much harder. Whereas this way, you're going right back into the gig again. So is it going to go back to the way it used to be when it can have this aspect? I think what people are going to do is this. They're going to say, can we do it on a Zoom or a StreamYard or an Ecamm or, Hippo video or whatever the case may be? Or do we actually need to be there hands-on? Because if the hands-on is needed, then yeah, I think people will do it. But I think that at the end of the day, Randy, what you said is very true, and that is that even if they don't need to see you, you popping in and saying, "Hey, Randy, hey, Reuben, hey, Wes," they're going to have that, kind of camaraderie and like you said, a bro hug that they just know you're out there for them, even though they know they can get you on one of these. It's nice if you can to pop in and just say, "Hey, just want to say hi and make sure you guys are okay." So it's going to be a hybrid of all that and then some, and what that then some remains to be seen. But I have the utmost assuredness that it's probably going to be leaning toward what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
So Reuben, do you see with I know your customer base is one that I'm not used to. I mean, I don't know the West, right? The mountain states. Will in between seeing Reuben, does this make sense to jump on?
Yeah.
Because what I found is not only from your standpoint, maybe not necessarily wanting to take the 2.5 hours if I stop in, right? Because you're busy, but you do it because you're a nice guy. From my standpoint, like Wes just said, I can't wait to come out and see you when we can do that with some common sense, right? But let's face it, that's a several-hour flight, probably 2 to 3 days for airport. Get a rental car. It's a lot of stuff to do.
Right.
Not that I wouldn't do it for somebody like yourself because we've got a long-term relationship. Not that I wouldn't do it for a brand new customer, right? But there's a point to where literally when we get done with this, you, I, and Wes are all going to click off, say goodbye, wave at each other, do some fake bro hugging, and I'm going to get on another Zoom. You're going to get on this. You're going to make a phone call. You're going back out in the plant. Wes is going to go produce something else, right? Where when you're traveling, you can't do that. So, like I said, I think and I said this last week because I know I've been pretty heavy in my promotion of, if you will, the idea of virtual, because I believe in it. I believe in these sort of things and Zoom calls and sending text videos and so forth. I think I sent one to you one day sitting at a pub with a glass of wine, I think, and I said nothing, if you remember. But just stuff like that is fun to do. It keeps you in front of people. But still, at some point in time, I need to walk into your door and you go, Randy, and I go, Reuben, and we have a big old bro hug and we go have some pizza and brewskis, right? I mean, that has to happen, right? So what do you think? Because I need to sort of wrap this up because I've already took a lot of your time, but any closing thoughts about anything we've talked about?
No, I think you're right. One of the things I think you do well, which is stay connected. And I think that's the key, right? We all have to or should stay connected with our customers. And this has presented, 2020 and COVID has presented a few challenges with that. I don't think that because we can't show up at the door doesn't mean we can't find a way to connect, right? And I think that's, if I get a 30-second video from Randy, it's really easy to look at it, respond, go about my day. You've made that connection. And I think that's what we try to do, but more than anything, really be intentional and hear what the customer's saying when he does make a phone call. Because so much of our business today is driven by email, an automatic entry, right? And there's not as many phone calls. There's hardly any fax, and there's not as much connection. And I think I would probably say I don't know what all the challenges are going to hold. I think we're going to all learn more after this, looking back on it, right? But I think we're going to evolve a little bit more on how we connect to our customers. And I think that's a pretty big key in sending a short message and email. You don't necessarily have to show up to be connected. And I think getting creative with that's huge right now.
Well, I agree. So, and being connected in these kind of times is probably more so than ever. And as we start coming out of them, and my parting word I would say is that, 2020, March something-ish is when it really started going, okay, something's going really sideways here, right? We weren't prepared for that at all, right? Nobody was.
Right.
Our industry did a very, very good job of recalibrating, figuring out what we need to do to service our customers, how to meet protocols, and how to live within what different municipalities and state and federal governments told us we can and we can't do, and just found ways to do business, right? The exciting thing for me, I think, going into 2021, because let's face it, we're still in 2020 from a standpoint of where we're at right now, right? A lot of shutdowns, some states worse than others, some massively so, some coming back, some not, all the stuff. And we can argue all day. Is that for another month? Is that another 6 months? Whatever, but it doesn't matter. I think my point, hey, Wes, is we're so far ahead of the curve now because all we've got to do is continue what we've learned to do, which is adapt. But we've learned to adapt already. We've went through the adaption learning curve, right? And so now whatever adaptations we need to make for this, I feel like I am so much ahead of the curve where I was getting blindsided by this in 20 or in March or whatever. So
absolutely.
Well, I think, we've got another almost 30 minutes here because you're just that good of a guest. Anything else from you, Wes?
No, I'm good.
Reuben, I appreciate what you did, appreciate what you do, and awesome guest. Good job. I think it's some great input that people are going to get a big kick out of. And so, we'll post this up in a couple of days up as added wins, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, man. Thanks again for having me on, Randy.
Thank you, my friend. Wes,
appreciate it, guys. Thanks, Wes.
We're out of here.
All right.
Cheers, y'all.
Yep.